going on, man? It's the Wolf of Lion. I'm back with another episode of Beyond the Ropes, brought to you by the Boss Up Ball Out podcast. And I'm here to bring this to you. I think this is one of the most interesting topics there is on the about boxing, really. So let's get into this, man. People have probably been wondering, like, why we're not seeing good matchups. Is it because the talent appreciation? Is it because guys are choosing the UFC and things like that. And actually, there's more talent in boxing right now than there's ever been. Okay. The problem is the belt organizations. Okay. The belt organizations all have their own top 10, top 15 rankings. And it's not the same across the platform, right? So the belt organizations, the WBC, the IBF, the WBA, the WBO, they are their own entities. Okay, so the WBC is like um, that's like the UFC, right? That's the UFC. Bellator is like the IBF. The WBA is one championship. The WBO is PFL. Okay, so and that's speaking in MMA terms. That's just to let you guys know what exactly is going on in boxing, um, and that's caused a lot of division in boxing because rankings just aren't the same. And like if you were to say that UFC, Bellator, one championship, PFL, their rankings are different, right? They have different people ranked. Well, so do these belt organizations, and it's for different reasons. You know, um, it could be. I mean, it's all financial, right? Now, like let's not kid ourselves. It's all financial, but let's say there's one guy here who's a champion of the WBC, and there's one guy here who's a champion of the IBF. These companies, well, I wouldn't say belt organizations are ranking certain fighters to keep certain fighters champ. Okay, so that's what's happening. Because there's a mandatory list, right? There's a mandatory you have to fight these like these three guys, right? There's a list, and you have to fight these three guys. And what happens is these belt organizations want to keep certain guys as champion, so they rank guys that shouldn't be ranked, so they can pick that guy, so they can continue being the champion. And that's what's really creating separation in boxing. That's why people are like, is boxing falling off? No, boxing isn't falling off. Boxing has way more talent now. The thing is these different belt organizations are different companies basically in boxing, and they're trying to keep their champion and make their champion and build their champion. That's why their top 10 list or top 15 list is different from another's. So like that is one reason. That's one of the biggest reasons for the division in boxing and why people think like there's just not a lot of talent. Boxing's just not exciting. Boxing is not exciting because the best fighters are not fighting the best fighters. Okay, the best fighter from the WBC is not fighting the best fighter in the IBF or in the WBA or in the WBO, or maybe that WBC champion will have the WBA belt as well. So the WBC and WBA belt are with this guy over here, and the IBF is with this guy, and the WBO is with this guy over here. And they rank guys who are not even legit contenders in those other belt organizations, right? They rank them high in the WBC and the WBA, right? So they're taking those opportunities because it's like, hey, I wasn't gonna get this fight in the IBF. I wasn't gonna get this fight in the WBO, but now I'm getting this fight in the WBC and the WBA organizations. I'm getting fights, so I'm only going to take fights with those organizations. So that's the reason why I make the comparison to the UFC, Bellator, one fight, one championship, or I think it's one pride fighting in the PFL, because those belt organizations have become those. Um, and that is one of the biggest problems in boxing, man. Is that, man. And it's really it's causing a lot of disruption. in boxing because we're getting guys fighting each other who just it don't need to be. Those are not exciting fights. And while that's happening, the UFC is not going through any of that because they got one champion, right? And they kind of have a lock on pay-per-view events. And Dana White is a smart guy because he's not gonna create those different avenues for guys to make money, which you kind of think like, man, there's less money involved in the UFC, but not really because Dana White gives out checks for knockout of the night and for this and for that, so that's where I think the UFC has the heads up on boxing is because they can make the best fight the best. Boxing can't make the best fight the best because they're all different organizations. I don't know, man, but you know what? Follow the crew, man. Follow Kurt Steele. He posts content from the Boss Up Ball Out podcast on his X, on his Instagram, on his TikTok, his Facebook. He's all over the place, man. LL Cool Torrance posts his little interesting Thirsty Thursdays. You know what I'm saying? All of that on Instagram with My High Media. That's his little thing over there, man. And also, I do things at Wolverine Sports Talk, and I post it on X, on Instagram, on Facebook, on my YouTube channel is Wolverine Sports Talk. But I just kind of wanted to throw that in there, man. It's a little promo for us, man. As you know, man, me, myself, Kurt Steele, LL Cool Torrance, we host the Boss Up Ball Out podcast, which is the one who brings you this content right here on Beyond the Ropes. But another thing I want to get into is the TV networks. Okay, that has created even more division in boxing. And if you want to take a little dive into it, remember when Floyd Mayweather fought Oscar De La Hoya. Okay, the reason why that fight was so big and so monumental is because a little backstory about that. Oscar De La Hoya gave Floyd Mayweather the money to buy himself out of Bob Arum's contract, to buy himself out of Top Rank Boxing. Okay, so that because Bob Arum, I don't know his reasoning, but he was blocking the Oscar De La Hoya Floyd Mayweather fight from happening, and they wanted to fight, right? They wanted to fight, and they wanted to get paid. So Oscar De La Hoya fronted Floyd the money to buy himself out of that top rank contract. Now, the reason why that fight was like not happening, one of the reasons why is because Oscar De La Hoya had a contract with HBO Boxing. Okay. Floyd Mayweather had a contract with Showtime Boxing. Okay. And again, that falls under line with the WBC, IBF, WBA, WBO. Now that you have these network contracts, right? And you got guys on this network and guy on this network, and then maybe you got a guy with an ESPN contract, and those guys now have obligations, right? You have obligations when you sign those contracts where I'm gonna fight so many fights under this banner of Showtime. I'm gonna fight this many fights under HBO. I'm gonna fight this many fights under ESPN, right? So now you have guys who they're making fights, but they're not. Excuse me. They might not be the fights that they want. That they're the fights with fighters that are under the HBO banner, right? So now HBO banner is controlling who they're fighting. Okay, then you get Showtime controlling who they're fighting, ESPN controlling who they're fighting because when they have contracts, they have to fight people under that banner. So not only was there the WBC, IBF, WBA, WBO, now there's okay, well, I'm on HBO, I'm on Showtime, I'm on ESPN, I'm on PBC. Now PBC fighters can only fight PBC fighters. Now, HBO and Showtime have bowed out of the game. So they're no longer factors in the game. And that's another reason why boxing is starting to slow up because there's not that many promoters of boxing. I know Turki Al Sheikh over there in Saudi Arabia. He's been bringing boxing, um, the best of boxing, really. Which is sad that America is not at the forefront of that anymore. But Turki Al Sheikh has the money. He's willing to spend the money, and and now the biggest fights are happening in Saudi Arabia, and it's like all this division in boxing. It's just creating it's creating a dead pool that makes it seem like there's no talent in boxing, but it's not that. You got four top fighters in every weight class, and they're not fighting each other. So they're fighting guys who are B fighters. They're A fighters and they're B fighters, and those guys are fighting each other, and they're not good matches. Okay, B fighters. There's a reason why you're a B fighter. And there's a reason why he's an A fighter, right? B fighter, A fighter, and that gets exposed, and people are tired of watching that. So while I said Dana White has a lock on it, he has a lock on it because there's one champion, there's one promoter. Okay, you can sign up with these different gyms and things like that, but they don't have any weighing in the matchmaking process of Dana White in the UFC. And that is why the UFC has risen because they have the best fighting the best. And for unfortunately in boxing, the best is not fighting the best. And it sucks, man. It really does suck, man. But I just want to say this real quick, man. I'm gonna have to plug this in one more time. Let me find the bam. Follow the crew again, man. I'm on, follow the crew, man. Kurt Steele, LL Cool Torrance, and myself. You see this right there, man. You can all those platforms, man. You can check out Detroit Lions content on there from the Boss Up Ball Out podcast. Your home for organic debate on the Detroit Lions, because as you know, and I know, the Lions is that thing right now, man. So don't try to act like they're not, because they is. They really is, man. But I just had to throw that plug in there one more time. But also, I want to say another reason why boxing self separated is because there's too many promoters, and that is even more division in boxing. You're like, okay, we got the WBA, the WBC, the IBF, the WBO. Okay, now we have HBO and Showtime, who recently have bowed out of boxing. Now we got ESPN, PBC, and you're like, man, like there's a lot of division in boxing. And it's like, but there's one more factor in that, and that is the promotional companies. Okay, you want to talk about the top promotional companies? There's too many, right? But as a fighter, I'm like, this is great, right? This is great for me because now I'm getting paid. I'm getting busted up, and I'm getting paid for it. But from a fan's perspective, there's way too many promoters in boxing. So when you try to, like, you know, do I care about the boxer or do I care about the fans? And the gap is getting wider and wider as time goes on. But you got Golden Boy, Oscar De La Hoya, his Golden Boy promotions. You got Bob Arum, his top ranked promotions. Don King is kind of fizzling away, but he was a staple for so long. You got Mayweather Promotions. You got Gary Shaw Promotions, who kind of does it kind of in the Northeast. Lou DiBella Promotions, DiBella Entertainment, that's Lou DiBella. Star Boxing, which is an East Coast promoter. Salita Promotions, who is promoting the women's champion. You know who she is, Clarissa Shields. And they have a few other fighters under that banner. And then the guys who are really, really who are really going to the forefront of this is Turki Al Sheikh from Saudi Arabia, and he's teamed up with Frank Warren. And they're really making fights happen because Turki Al Sheikh got the bread, right? He has the money to make it happen. Saudi Arabia is probably the richest country in the world, um, and he has it. So he's making these fights happen because he's talking money. and he has the money to basically do whatever he wants, and that's why um, Turkey Al Sheik is really taking over in boxing. I wouldn't say he's really out there completely taking over boxing because PBC is still kind of taking the forefront probably in America, but as in just worldwide in Europe and Middle East and stuff like that, man. Turkey Al Sheik and Frank Warren are running the show. So, but yeah, man, it's just too many promoters in boxing. And when you get those promotional companies, right, they're basically, okay, we got the champions, right? So we got the champions under this promotional company. So that's what Terrence Crawford was a victim of early on in his career. He was under a promotional contract, and his promoter did not have any of the top fighters, so he could not fight any of the top fighters. He has recently got out of that, and he's recently became, I believe, part of PBC Boxing, and PBC Banner now has a lot of fighters, right? So he can get a lot more exciting fights under the PBC banner. And I just with all that, with the different belt organizations, with the different TV networks, with the different promotional companies, man, that is the reason why it seems like there are no good fighters left in boxing. Well, there's a few, but actually there is a lot of good fighters in boxing. But we've come so far down this rabbit hole that I don't know how we get out. I know that HBO and Showtime are tired of losing their ass on fights because you got the organization and promoters ranking fighters don't who are not that good and having their champion fight that guy and keeping belts. Um, you know, I don't know, man. I don't know what the answer is really. Um, I think we've come too far now to go back. But there's just so much talent in boxing that we have to make a way for the best to fight the best because the UFC is doing it, right? And they're making a ton of money over there. So, boxing just has to find a way, man. They have to find a way to bridge the gap, right? And share the money, man. There's so much money in the fight game. Make it happen. But with that being said, man, this is the reason why, man, there's been so much boxing's dead and so much of that talk, man, is just because of this right here. This right here. Uh Too many promoters, too many TV networks, you know, too many belt organizations. But I can only pray. But with that being said, man, I'm the Wolf Lion coach Mike Jones, and this has been Beyond the Ropes.